Hey, it's Dan Morales. This is Homebuyer Radio. This is episode number 158. So this week what I want to talk about, and we've talked about this in weeks past, is we've talked about starting this mortgage process sooner, right? Especially if you're somebody who's buying for the first time, please start this process sooner, because there's so many moving parts that oftentimes you're just not going to be aware of, okay? And you can make assumptions about this mortgage process, and those assumptions oftentimes can be wrong. Now, there's a ton of information that's out there on the internet, and a lot of that information, we've talked about this in some of our previous episodes. There's an episode, if you go back, just talks about, the web of lies, right? There's a lot of information out there that, in all honesty, is just wrong. And so what happens is, a lot of times people will go to the internet, they'll do some research, and they'll come up with, just information that they're counting on or relying on. And either that information can be outdated, it could be wrong, or, there's just changes that have happened since maybe that information was published. And so it's really important that you start this process sooner. And I'll give you a kind of a case in point here. I like to tell stories as part of what, we do in the podcast, because I deal with so many different situations over the course of a week. And a lot of times these situations are situations that are avoidable, have this person just started the process sooner. I had a client that, wanted to buy a property. They're out looking at properties, and, they were pre-approved back in early 2019. Never updated their pre-approval, never, did anything to, go through and make sure that they're still qualified or anything like that. Since they had their initial pre-approval, their credit score had gone down over 60 points. And that's a problem, okay? Because even though they were qualified previously, that 60-point drop is now an issue in being able to get them qualified. Well, of course, they went out and they started looking at houses, and of course fell in love with a house that they're not qualified for. Now, this is also, somebody that we reached out to multiple times to get them to try to update their information, following up with them to make sure that, they're still in the market, and if there's any questions or if anything's changed in their situation. No response. And then all of a sudden, show up on, Monday and want a pre-approval letter because, they want to write an offer on a house. Which, is difficult, right? In times where interest rates are really low, good lenders are busy, okay? And they can't always drop everything they're doing to try to accommodate the fact that you didn't take action sooner. And so in this case, we attempted to try to help this person quickly, but, the answer to their, situation isn't that simple. It's not that fast. It's just, there's a lot more moving pieces to this thing than what most people realize. So in that case, no, we can't give you a pre-approval letter. And in all honesty, I don't know if I can even get you approved at all, given kind of their current circumstances of where they're at. So when I talk about starting this process earlier, I'm not really joking. I'm not kidding, because, in cases like this, you can do it to yourself. And when you do it to yourself because you lacked action, or you just felt that, it didn't matter that you did, take action, then you did it to yourself. And, the only person that you can really be disappointed with is yourself for not taking action. Now, the other thing that, I'm going to take issue with, and, there might be some real estate agents that listen to this podcast that maybe don't appreciate my insight on this, but, at the end of the day, your realtor needs to take some ownership for this too. Why a realtor would not have made sure that they have a current pre-approval, prior to going out and showing them a bunch of houses amazes me. In my mind, if you are working with a real estate agent, that real estate agent is not going through and not getting you, making sure you have an updated pre-approval letter prior to going out and showing you houses, that's negligent, right? Why would you want to go out and look at a bunch of houses you can't afford? Who knows if you can even afford them? Who knows if you even qualify? So why would you go through and do that if you don't even know you can get a mortgage, right? A good experienced realtor is going to want to know that you're qualified before they go out and show you a bunch of houses. That respects their time. It respects, the effort that they put into, serving you. And it also makes sure that they can serve you properly. Because if you can only qualify for, let's just say, a $1,500 a month payment, and, with your down payment and so on, that equates to, let's just say, a $200,000 house, then they'll make sure that they show you properties that can reasonably fit those criteria that you qualify for. What good does it do anybody for you to go look at a bunch of houses, fall in love with a house that you can't afford, and then just, waste everybody's time? Okay, so start this process sooner. It amazes me. People get pre-approved and then they think that pre-approval is good for 2 years. A lot changes, right? Like the world we live in today, guys, is very different. Nobody saw a pandemic. Nobody saw these things that we're currently experiencing. It is a different world, and the rules are changing, the guidelines are changing, and life is changing. And if you don't take some action to try to go through and make sure that you're still qualified, that nothing has changed, it's going to impact you, it is on you. You get to own it. Don't be mad at your loan officer. Don't be mad. You can probably be a little bit mad at your realtor for not encouraging you to start earlier. But if you just called the realtor on Saturday, went out and wanted to start looking at houses immediately and write an offer immediately, and they've been encouraging you to get pre-approved, then be mad at yourself. But if your agent hasn't had a conversation with you about pre-approval and qualification and stuff like that, and hasn't verified your ability to actually qualify, then you should probably call into question whether or not they have the proper expertise to service you. Okay, so don't be offended when somebody asks, how much were you pre-approved for? Have you talked to the bank? What are you qualified for? They're doing their job. Do your job and get into the bank earlier. Get pre-approved, because oftentimes people are surprised to find out that there are things that are wrong with their credit history, or there are challenges to how their income would qualify or how it would count that create issues with being able to get a loan approval. All of that is avoidable if you start this process sooner. Hey, I'm Dan Morales, America's Mortgage Man. You can find me online at danmorales.com. My NMLS number is 709-729. My phone number is 616-931-4629. I appreciate all the listeners to the podcast. We've been trying to add more current content to the podcast on a more regular basis. This is definitely a labor of love. Obviously, if you're in the market to buy a house, we'd love to have the opportunity to work with you. But it's definitely a labor of love. One of the things that I'm going to start doing is we're going to start doing some video content on a series that I like to call Mortgage Hacks. And, Mortgage Hacks is really going to be a series that is based on little small things that you should be aware of that will ideally help you structure your loan in the best way to save you money. And then it's going to have a second feel to it, right? A mortgage hack is somebody who, in my mind, wants to put information out there, but doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about, right? If you scour YouTube for information on mortgages, there's people who aren't even in the industry that are putting out, video on, Instagram or YouTube, Facebook, that talks about, their strategies for paying your mortgage off faster and so on. And they don't have any clue of what they're talking about. And in all honesty, if you followed some of those strategies, you could find yourself in a very bad position. So again, this has been a labor of love. I love to try to educate people, whether or not you take a mortgage from me personally, we're hopefully helping to educate you and make you a better home buyer and better at being able to kind of vet what's out there. Everybody's an expert, guys. I see this all the time, on social media. So-and-so mortgage expert. I have access to a tool that tells me, how long somebody's been in the business, the kind of volume that they've done, and what their experience is. And I can tell you that when I look up some of these quote-unquote experts, the numbers don't back that up. It's nothing more than, smoke and mirrors in the modern day snake oil salesman that is out there trying to convince you that they know something that they don't. And I'm not meaning to talk bad about competitors as much as it just makes me angry when I see people purport to be experts when in fact they are not. So what makes me an expert? I've done this 29 plus years. In all of those 29 years, I have done it very successfully, and I have thousands of clients to back that up. I've done this for a long period in a very conservative, relatively small community, and I can tell you that in this community, if you didn't do business the right way, you'd be out of business. So my reputation speaks for itself. My experience speaks for itself, and the number of transactions that we do where we rescue clients where a transaction's going sideways. It's numerous every month, to a point where it's I'm starting to grow in frustration because, there are a lot of agents that are not getting their clients approved. They're not getting them approved by a competent lender that knows what they're doing. And then remarkably, at the last minute, they show up on our doorstep and want us to try to save the day for them. And at that point, everybody's already upset. They're already angry because, transaction didn't close on time. And we step in to rescue a transaction and somehow, in some cases, managed to be the bad guy, even though we got it all done. So go figure, right? Dan Morales, America's Mortgage Van. Hey, I hope you guys are staying safe, stay strong, and I am positive we will be back soon with another episode. Talk to you soon.